It was supposed to be a quiet family dinner. My wife Lisa and I had been looking forward to the weekend at her parents' cabin for weeks. The air was crisp, the fire crackled softly in the stone fireplace, and everyone was in good spirits until I saw her phone. We just finished dessert and I was leaning back in my chair, watching her scroll through her messages. She was sitting across from me, her face lit by the warm glow of the lantern. I noticed her fingers tremble slightly, her eyes flicking nervously to the screen. At first, I shrugged it off as simple distraction, but then I saw the text bubble pop up on the screen and my stomach dropped. It was from Jard, her best friend since college. The message read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Been thinking about last weekend." The words made my jaw tighten. I stared at her, trying to read her face, but her expression was carefully neutral. I felt my palms grow clammy, and my heart hammered like a drum in my chest. I reached for my glass of wine, but the glass was icy cold against my fingers. I kept my eyes on her, waiting for her to slip up to give herself away. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and she quickly closed her phone. She tried to act normal, but I caught her glancing at her purse as if she was trying to hide something. "Lisa," I finally said, voice tight, "what's going on? Who's Jard texting you all those late-night messages?" She froze for a second, her eyes darted around, avoiding mine. "It's nothing," she murmured, voice shaky. "Just some stupid jokes, nothing serious." But I knew better. I saw the way her fingers fidgeted with the edge of her napkin, the way her cheeks flushed with a faint pink. I leaned in, feeling the heat rise up my neck. "Come on, Lisa. Don't lie to me. I saw the messages. I want the truth, now." She hesitated, then looked away. That's when I noticed the faint scent of perfume that wasn't hers, musk and a hint of something floral, unfamiliar. My mind raced. Why would she hide her phone? Why was she nervous? The pieces clicked into place. The quick glances, the nervous fidgeting, the perfume. I felt a cold wave of suspicion wash over me. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is there someone else?" Her eyes welled up with tears and she shook her head. "It's not what you think, I swear." But I didn't want to hear her lies anymore. My stomach twisted, a mix of betrayal and rage bubbling inside. I excused myself from the table, needing to get away to breathe. As I stepped outside onto the porch, the cold night air hit my face like a slap. I pulled out my phone, and that's when I saw the call history. Jard's number was right there, the last call made just 20 minutes ago. No missed calls, no texts, just silence. I stared at it, feeling the weight of what I'd just uncovered. This wasn't a slip-up. This was planned. I knew I couldn't confront her right then. Instead, I decided to hold my cards close. I needed to gather evidence to understand exactly what I was dealing with. The feeling of betrayal burned deep, like a hot iron searing my insides. All I could think about now was how I'd been played, how I'd trusted her all these years. I went back inside, pretending everything was normal, but inside my mind was racing. I felt the cold sweat on my palms, the raw sting of betrayal. How deep did this go? And more importantly, what was I going to do about it? I knew I couldn't just let this slide. I had to plan to get revenge, not out of malice, but to restore my dignity. The night was just the beginning. I had a plan, and I knew exactly how I was going to execute it. Would she ever see this coming? Or was I about to turn her world upside down? That was what I had to decide. The days that followed were a blur of cold anger and slow planning. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been blind, that I'd missed the signs right in front of me. But now I was determined to find the truth, no matter what it took. I started by digging through her phone, secretly, of course. I knew she'd delete everything, but I had a little trick up my sleeve. I installed a remote app that let me see her messages without her knowing. Every night after she fell asleep, I'd sneak into her purse or grab her phone when she was in the bathroom. It was disgusting how easy it was to find what I was looking for. The messages with Jard weren't just innocent banter, they turned into something much darker. They talked about meeting up, plans for more, even mention of lying to me about their meetings. The words made my stomach churn. One message from Jard caught my eye. "When are we finally going to do it? I need to see you, I can't keep pretending." My heart pounded. I felt hot and cold all at once. I'd spent years trusting her, and now I saw she was planning something behind my back. I kept a little secret stash of screenshots, neatly saved in a folder on my laptop. I had enough evidence to blow the lid off this affair, but I was still holding back. I needed to think. How far was she willing to go? Did she think she could just erase everything and pretend it never happened? That's when I decided I needed to take more control. I started researching how to expose her, without giving her a chance to spin. Her lies, I wanted to do it in a way that would leave her no room to deny it. I knew I couldn't just confront her blindly, I had to be smart. One evening I set her up. I left my laptop open on the dining table with the folder of screenshots visible. I made sure she saw it when she came into the room. Her face froze when she saw the evidence. She looked at me, eyes wide with shock and fear. "Explain," I said, voice low and steady. "Who is Jard and what have you been doing?" She stammered, trying to deny it, but I cut her off. "I have the messages, I know everything." Her hands trembled and I saw the guilt wash over her face like a tidal wave. She finally broke, tears streaming down her cheeks. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I swear I love you." "Love," I snapped. "You think love includes lying and cheating. That's not love, Lisa. That's betrayal, plain and simple." My mind was made up. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I needed to hit back, but with precision, something she wouldn't see coming. I told her I was done talking, that I needed some space. I grabbed my keys, feeling the weight of everything I'd uncovered. I knew I couldn't stay under the same roof with her, not after this. But I had one last thing planned, something that would shake her to her core. I couldn't just walk away without leaving a mark. It was time to turn the tables. She thought she was safe, that she could erase her mistakes and pretend everything was fine. But she had no idea what I was capable of. As I headed out into the night, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I was about to make sure she remembered this night for the rest of her life. And so I spent the next couple of days setting everything in motion. I wasn't just going to confront her, I was going to give her a taste of her own medicine. The plan was simple enough, but it would be brutal enough to make her rethink everything. I knew I had to be careful, precise. No mistakes. No leaving behind clues. Once I was ready, I'd make my move. But right now, I just stood in the quiet of my apartment, feeling the cold dread settle deep in my chest. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming what was mine, my dignity, my trust, my peace. And I was going to do it no matter what. The plan was simple, but it took a lot of careful preparation. I spent the next couple of days gathering everything I needed, screenshots, evidence, and a clear idea of how I was going to execute. I wanted to hit her where it counted, but I also needed to stay in control of the situation. No messy confrontations, no leaving clues behind, just cold, calculated precision. I knew she'd be expecting some sort of blow-up. That's why I made sure she didn't see me coming. I set up a fake email account, one that looked legit, something she wouldn't suspect. Then I crafted a message, something that would make her realize I knew everything but wouldn't come off as desperate or angry, at least not yet. I wanted her to feel vulnerable, to realize she'd been caught completely off guard. The message was simple. "I know about Jard. I've seen everything. You're playing a dangerous game, Lisa. You might think you've erased everything, but I've saved it all. We need to talk. When you're ready, call me." I sent it late at night, then waited. The next morning, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I watched her from the doorway. Her hands trembled as she looked at the screen. Her face turned pale. She hesitated, then picked it up and stared at the message for a long moment. She didn't reply right away, but I could see her mind racing. I'd done enough. Now it was her turn to panic. I stayed quiet, watching her every move while I pretended to be casual. I didn't want her to realize I'd set the trap just yet. Instead, I sat on the sofa, pretending to read a book, listening to the distant hum of the refrigerator, feeling my insides tighten with anticipation. After a few minutes, she finally picked up her phone and dialed my number. Her voice was shaky when she spoke. "Are you serious? You have all of that?" she asked, voice trembling. "Yeah," I replied coolly. "And I'm not going to just sit here and pretend it did happen. We're going to talk face to face." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "Meet me at the park in 30 minutes, and don't try to lie your way out of this." She hesitated before agreeing. As she hung up, I saw her clutch her stomach as if the air had been knocked out of her. That's exactly what I wanted: fear, uncertainty, realization that she'd finally been caught. I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction and rage. The pieces were falling into place and I was ready for the climax. I knew she'd try to deny everything, to spin her lies, but I had proof, more than enough, and I was prepared to use it to make sure she knew I wasn't fooling around anymore. While she got ready, I took a deep breath. I told myself to stay calm, to keep my temper in check. I had to stick to the plan. No outbursts, no shouting, just cold, measured truth. Because once I exposed her fully, there'd be no going back. The walk to the park felt like an eternity. The cold breeze whipped around me, making my skin prickle, but inside I was burning up. I spotted her sitting on a bench, nervously clutching her purse. When I approached, she looked up, eyes wide, lips trembling. "Lisa," I said softly, "we need to talk." She nodded, silent. I kept my voice even. "I've seen your messages. I know what you've been up to. You're not fooling me anymore." I pulled out the folder of screenshots from my jacket pocket and laid it on her lap. "Your secrets are out now, so tell me what's really going on." Her eyes flicked over the evidence and I watched her carefully. For a moment she said nothing, then finally whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go this far, it just happened. Jard, he's my best friend, I swear I love you." "Stop," I cut her off sharply, voice cold. "The truth is, I saw enough to know that's bullshit. You didn't just fall into it, Lisa. You've been planning this, haven't you? While I was away, while I was trusting you, you were sneaking around, lying to my face." My heart pounded in my chest. I was so angry I could barely breathe. She looked down, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't want it to end like this. I thought I could fix it." I shook my head. "No, it's over." My voice was steady, but inside I was seething. "You chose Jard over me. You lied to my face, and now I get to make my choice." I reached into my pocket, pulling out a set of keys. "Here's your chance to do right by yourself, by whatever's left of your dignity, or you can keep lying. Either way, I want nothing to do with this anymore." Her hands reached out, trembling as she tried to grab the keys. "Please," she begged, voice cracking. "Don't do this. I'll do anything, just don't leave me." I looked her in the eye, trying to find the last shred of the woman I once loved. There was nothing there, just the girl I'd trusted turned into a stranger. "I'm done," I said softly, then turned and walked away, leaving her on that bench. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but inside I felt strangely lighter. I'd taken control. I'd finally made her face what she'd been hiding, walking away. From her, I knew this was the end. The betrayal had cut too deep. I'd been betrayed, and I was done being the sucker. The next step was clearing out my things and moving on. No looking back. I'd give her the keys and walk out of her life for good. That's what she deserved, and honestly, what I needed too. And as I left that park, I realized one thing. Sometimes, revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your dignity when everything else is lost. The aftermath felt like walking through a fog that refused to lift. I went home that night, but I couldn't sleep. Every sound seemed amplified, the creak of the floorboards, the distant sirens, my own breathing, all grounding me in this new, cold reality. I kept replaying the confrontation over and over in my mind, trying to hold on to what I'd said, what I'd done. The next morning, I woke up with a plan clearer than ever. It wasn't enough to just walk away. I needed to make sure she understood that I wasn't just some fool she could toy with. I wanted her to feel the sting of betrayal, but I also wanted her to know I was in control. I took that feeling and turned it into a carefully crafted scheme. I started by changing my routines, disappearing from her life in subtle ways. I canceled our joint plans, blocked her on social media, and even changed my phone number. I knew she'd try to reach out, maybe beg or plead, but I wasn't going to give her that satisfaction. No, I had something else in mind, something that would hit her where it hurt most. I rented a small apartment downtown, close enough so she'd see I was serious about leaving, and I made sure to pack a bag with only the essentials. I also reached out to a couple of my friends, people I trusted and who had no loyalty to her, and told them to keep an ear open. If she tried to contact them, I wanted to know what she was saying behind my back. The real kicker was the final part of my plan. I went to her workplace early one morning, unannounced. I wanted her to see I was moving on. I waited outside her office for a few minutes, watching her walk in, her face tense and pale. When she finally saw me, her eyes widened like she'd seen a ghost. "Can we talk?" I asked, voice steady but cold. She hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. I handed her a sealed envelope. "That's everything I need to say. It's your last chance to be honest about Jard, about what you've been doing." She looked at the envelope, then back at me, trembling. What is this?" "Your apology, or whatever you want to call it," I said. "Inside, you'll find the truth. And don't bother trying to deny it. I already know everything." She hesitated, then slowly opened the envelope. Her eyes widened as she read the contents: screenshots, detailed timelines, everything I'd been gathering. Whatever tiny hope she had of convincing me otherwise evaporated instantly. Her face went slack, eyes brimming with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered again. "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was lonely and Jard. He promised me things I'd been craving. I didn't think it would turn into this." I shook my head. "You lied, you cheated, and you played yourself. I'm done. You're not someone I can trust anymore. I want a clean break. Here's your last shot. Pack your things and leave. I won't be part of this anymore, ever." She looked at the pile of evidence and then at me, defeated. Her shoulders sagged and she nodded silently. She knew she'd lost. I turned to walk away, and that's when she finally broke down crying. I didn't stop. I kept walking. It felt like a weight had been lifted from my chest, but I also knew this was just the beginning of what would be a long healing process. As I left her behind, I realized that my own strength was in my clarity. No more lies, no more betrayal. I was done being the victim. I went home, packed my bags, and drove away from everything I once thought was real. I didn't look back. I knew I'd do better, find someone who deserved my trust. But for now, I had to focus on clearing out the wreckage. I handed over the keys to her apartment, left the house door wide open, and made a clean break. It's strange how clarity hits you after betrayal. You realize your worth, not because of revenge, but because you refuse to be pawn in someone else's game. I learned that the hardest lessons often leave the deepest scars, but they also teach you to stand taller, stronger. Sometimes, the only way forward is to cut your losses and walk away with your dignity intact. The days after I cut ties with Lisa felt like walking through a long, quiet tunnel. No contact, no messages, just silence. I threw myself into restoring some semblance of normalcy, going back to work, reconnecting with friends I distanced myself from, and most importantly, trying to piece myself back together. But even as I moved forward, I knew I couldn't ignore what had happened. The betrayal had cut deep, and now I had to figure out what it all meant for me, how to heal and maybe someday trust again. One evening, I was sitting in my new apartment, staring at the wall, when I realized I needed closure. Not for her, but for myself. I needed to see her face, hear her voice, and really let her know what her betrayal had cost me. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about making her see that I wasn't someone to mess with and that she couldn't get away with lying to the person she claimed to love. I decided that I was going to confront her one last time, face to face. But I wanted to do it on my terms, not hers. I reached out to her, saying I wanted to meet. Surprisingly, she agreed, probably out of guilt or maybe curiosity. Whatever her reasons, I didn't care. The meeting was set in a small cafe on the edge of town. I chose the place, simple and quiet, where I could speak honestly without distractions. When she arrived, she looked nervous, her eyes darting around like she was trying to escape. I could see the guilt weighing down her shoulders, but I didn't feel any sympathy, just cold determination. "You know why I asked to meet," I said, voice calm but firm. "I needed to tell you something you probably already figured out. You're not going to get a second chance with me. Not after what you did. I want you to understand the damage you've caused, not just to me, but to yourself." She looked down, clutching her purse tightly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I was stupid. I didn't mean to hurt you. Jard, he's just a part of my past now." "Part of your past," I echoed, leaning forward. "That's funny, because I've got the evidence. All those messages, the plans, the calls, you thought you could just erase it all, pretend it never happened, but I kept copies. I've got proof that you were lying to my face. And I want you to know that I'm not interested in revenge, but I refuse to be made a fool of and leave everything behind like it wasn't a big deal." Her eyes welled with tears. "Please, can't we just forget this? I still love you. I want to fix it." "I don't want to fix it," I interrupted. "Because I realize something. I deserve better. I deserve honesty, respect, and someone who isn't going to cheat on me with my best friend. You crossed a line I can't come back from, so I'm telling you now this is goodbye. I'm moving on and I suggest you do the same." She looked devastated, tears streaking her cheeks. "I never wanted to lose you," she choked out. "Goodbye," I said quietly, standing up to leave. "Don't try to contact me again." Walking away from her face, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. That chapter was finally over. I was no longer a victim of her lies, and I was ready to rebuild my life bit by bit. The next days were about reclaiming my space and my peace. I canceled all our shared accounts, changed my phone number again, and even deleted her from social media. I didn't want her lurking in my life anymore. I wanted to be free of the past, free of her betrayal. Looking back, I realized the most important lesson was that I should never have given her the trust I did. But I also learned that reclaiming your dignity is the best revenge, a clean break, a fresh start. It's not about hurting her because she hurt me. It's about not letting her have that power over me anymore. My peace comes from knowing I stood tall, even when everything inside me wanted to shatter. That's the real victory. Weeks turned into months, and somehow I managed to get through it. Each day felt lighter than the last, even if the ache of betrayal never fully disappeared. I'd spent so long trusting her, believing she was my partner, my best friend. But losing that illusion forced me to face a hard truth. I had to rebuild my sense of worth from scratch. It was slow, but I learned to trust myself again. One afternoon, I stood in my new apartment, packing away the last of my things. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting long golden rays across the room. I looked around, feeling a strange sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. I thought about everything I'd been through, the pain, the betrayal, the revenge, and I realized I'd come out stronger. Not because I'd hurt her, but because I refused to let her destroy my confidence or my happiness. I picked up the keys to the place I'd just moved into and held them in my hand for a moment. A symbol of new beginnings, of freedom. I knew I had taken control of my life back. No more lies, no more betrayals. Just me, standing tall, ready for whatever came next. As I closed the door behind me, I felt a surge of clarity. No matter how deep the wound, time and effort could heal it. I'd learned a lot about myself, about resilience, about boundaries, and about what I truly deserved. Betrayal had taught me to be more cautious, but also more trusting in my own judgment. I'd be more careful with who I let into my life, but I wouldn't shut myself off from love either. Looking back, I know I did the right thing. I stood up for myself, I set boundaries, and I showed her that I was no longer a pawn to her lies. It was a hard lesson, but a necessary one. Sometimes you need to lose everything to realize what you're really worth. So I walked out of the apartment, took a deep breath, and stepped into the future. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't still a little cautious. But I'd also be lying if I said I wasn't hopeful that someday I'd find someone who truly valued honesty, respect, and loyalty. Someone who wouldn't betray me, but who'd stand by me through everything. And I knew deep down that I was finally ready, ready to trust again, ready to love again, and most importantly, ready to never let anyone take my peace away again. I'd learned my lesson well. Sometimes the only way to truly move on is to take action, to confront, and then let go. Because in the end, the greatest revenge is living well, without the weight of betrayal dragging you down.